Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am BorderWise and welcome back to From the Depths. A proper tutorial this time, about time we did one of those. So, it has been a long time since the major AI overhaul happened. I don't remember even the number of the update in which that happened. And I did cover it, but I didn't go into much detail because at the time I didn't know how to work the new AI particularly well. I was as much in the dark as most people, and I've learned slightly more since then, but the other day I realized, oh dang it, I haven't done a full AI tutorial yet, and people have asked me repeatedly to do one, so by gum the people have spoken, and so here it is. Kind of. I'm gonna need to break this up a little bit in the interests of not having the video be 10 million years long, as often tends to happen. So, this tutorial, as you probably guessed from the title of the video, is about AI behaviors. Or combat behaviors, rather. It's basically the first setting on the AI mainframe. So if you have the mainframe, you hit Q on it, this is the first screen you see. So, going to this, it decides how to engage. Behaviors are special autonomous routines that the vehicle can perform. Only one behavior can be active at a time. Each behavior requires an extra behaviors and additional routines card to be attached to the mainframe. If you don't have a behavior, the vehicle can still follow patrol orders and move in fleet formation using the maneuver routine of the next tab. So, maneuvers over there. And what this is the automatic routines that your AI will use when in combat and when it is activated. And there's 10 of them. Bombing run, circle, point at, hover above or below, broadside, ram, naval, tank broadside, aerial bombing, and resource gathering. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes, I know how to count. So, these are what we're going to be going through here. Just kind of a brief overview of each one. Every single one of these things have their uses, they all have their quirks. I've not gone through every single one in a huge amount of detail, largely because you don't have to. You can basically stick with just 1, 2, or 3, and just use them with absolutely no trouble at all. But each one of them does have distinct advantages over the other one, which at the moment I mostly can just theorize at. But if you run through all the faction craft in the game, you will find that pretty much every single behavior is used by like various factions and various craft, and they all work. They all do a job, and they do it competently, if not always brilliantly. So, what are we looking at here? What is this thing? This is a canoe, as you might have guessed. It is one of my favorite lazy afternoon build canoes. That is pretty much how I build all my craft these days. Sawtooth fashion, pointy at both ends. And this is just a platform which has power and an AI on it. You'll see this is pretty much it. There's the AI, there's the electric engine, and there are the RTGs that power it. It has no propulsion or anything like that, but this is the template I use to make every single one of the 10 vehicles I'm going to show off today. That's just to use various behaviors. And you'll notice off there in the distance is our friend the Marauder. We're not going to be blowing her up today unless we really feel like it. She is just there to demonstrate the behaviors of the various testing craft I've made. And very quickly, and they're not pretty to look at, they just show off basic maneuvers, and well, basic behaviors rather. So, let's turn the UI back on. Now let us pull this guy out of play and send him way over there. And so, let's get Rambo'd off. The first one we're gonna do is the very first one at the top of the list. We're going to go down them in order, and that is the bombing run. And so pretty much all of these test vehicles fly, just for the sake of consistency. They don't always fly the same way, and they don't always fly at the same altitude, but they all fly. And bombing runs, you pretty much need a thing that flies. And let's see here. And this is Bomber Airplane. These things are going to pull double duty in a later tutorial talking about AI maneuvers, so that's important to note. So, Bomber Airplane. So this thing is not a particularly fast bomber airplane thing. If we go here and go over to the AI, it's got just AI controlled pitch and roll control and thrust and all that stuff. And the maneuver is this. This is the bombing run. So, according to the thingy here, It describes the bombing run as do straight bombing runs at the enemy and describes aerial bombing is fly towards the enemy, then fly away, repeat. I think they've got that the wrong way round, because, I think what tends to happen is, as you watch this guy... So we go here, he goes here, he kind of dives at the target, and then before he flies over the target, he turns around and flies away again. And I've noticed this also tends to be the case with other stuff as well. So if we turn you off and we spawn in a plane, so where is our plane? There's the plane. A duster. There it is. God mode. This is what the duster does. So you'll notice we go here, duster, bombing run. So this is the exact same maneuver we've got. And you do this, flies at the target, and just flies away. Like, just stopping just short of the target and then retreating again. So that is the bombing run, so to speak. So, let's have a closer look at it. And looking at all the details of it. So, not hugely detailed, not going to experiment too much on camera. So, the main advantage of the bombing run is that you can control the distance it flies and stops and turns around. You can control the pitch to target. We'll pitch the target below this distance. So basically, this is what you want to use when you want to make a dive bomber. So those of you who are fans of World War II hardware, this is how you would make a Stuka dive bomber replica. And various things here, controlling combat altitude, altitude level to sea level, abort time, blah blah blah, and you all just tweak that in order to make it do what you want. The default, I have to say, works pretty well. Like, this is pretty much entirely unchanged, and the thing is doing pretty much exactly what I want it to. So that is very, very nice. So, that is the bombing run, so to speak. And let's spawn in our friend the Marauder again. That is our friend the Kalmar. We want our friend the Marauder, so we go over here. And next down on the list is the Circle. So, go over here. Where is it? Hover Circler. So this thing flies a little bit jankily because its maneuver is special. So, let's go here. You'll notice, and if you're wondering why your craft is maneuvering a particular way, this function, this path display of the AI of the vehicles is a very handy tool because it can tell you exactly what the AI is trying to do, and like whether it's managing to do that or not can immediately inform you of a problem either with the AI itself or the way your craft is set up to move. So that's very handy. So what this thing is doing here is circle at a distance. So this is one of a number of routines which are variations on the same theme. And the advantage of this one is that this is the kind of what you would want for a... Let's see, the maneuver here is hover movement. Don't worry about that. That'll be covered in another video. What this is that the thing orbits the target, but you can control the angle, you can control the roll, and you can control evasion. So upwards, evasion, altitude, offset. We're not at 0. Vehicle will go upwards at full altitude until it gets to combat altitude plus this value and switch to downwards movement. So it's basically you can make a kind of sine wave. The vehicle kind of orbits up and down. And possibly the best example of this is a Steel Strider's craft. A plane called... Where is it? It is the... No, where is it? Where is it? It's the Predator X. So this guy is a scary wee bastard. So, and you see it has the circle at a distance with a changed icon as well. And when we follow this guy, you'll notice... Should have spawned him in on, like, my team, I have to say. Notice he is circling at a specific distance, but the altitude is also changing. They're doing that kind of sine wave movement. This is very, very effective for dodging. Like, this particular Steel Strider's plane, I have tested a multiple kinds of anti-aircraft guns, and pretty much none of them, unless they have ridiculously fast shells, can hit this thing. So this circle at a distance is very, very good for a gunship. So something that flies, that orbits the target, and also just moves up and down. And it also means that using this AI routine, you don't need to use ACBs or a PID in order to get the thing to do that bobbing up and down motion. Especially since this thing, the Predator X, it's flying very fast. It's flying at over 140 meters per second. And good luck hitting this thing. You probably won't manage it. And over here, that's pretty much what this does. You'll notice this fella is rolling around a lot. And that's because it's a maneuver and its behavior are not exactly a perfect fit. Like your vehicle behaviors and their maneuvers, some of them work better together than others. I do believe they can all potentially work together, provided you build your craft the right way. But some of them are a better fit than others. So let us get our friend the Marauder back. Hello, friendly Marauder. God mode, all that stuff. And now let's move on to one of possibly the most important ones, and one of the ones I continually underestimate, which is point at and maintain distance. So we go here, and this is the #1 thing you would use if you want to build a Frontsider, as in a craft that points straight at a target and maintains its distance and just keeps pointing its nose at it. This is a handy hint I learned off the internet. This is a bit of a shonky one because it has a kind of terrible pitch control. But you can still see it's reached a distance, and now it is maintaining that distance, and it is continually puffing its turning thrusters in order to point straight at the Marauder, or as close to straight as possible. So let's have a look at the AI. It's also got the options for evasion, so when the azimuth to the target is greater than this angle, stop evasion, so turning is easy and weapons can track. I don't entirely know what that means. You don't need to mess with absolutely everything. In fact, when you're first learning these things, it's best to only stick with one or two, messing with one or two sliders at a time. So max pitch to target is 0, because I do not want this thing to pitch at all, because it does that anyway. Disable pitch above azimuth to target. Keep pitch at 0. I should probably mess with that. Left evasion time. This is handy, so if you stick... Let's see if this works. So go here. Let's call that a pusher. So now you see this thing is moving from side to side. Admittedly not very well, but it is doing that. This is a handy thing because strafing is one of the most effective ways of dodging anything in From the Depths. So if it moves to the left a little and then to the right a little, it's kind of moving sideways, and that really throws off the targeting of enemy craft. Altitude is relative to sea level, you can change that, altitude relative to target. So if you ignore altitude, leaving it up to adjustments to handle, so that's if you're using a PID or using ACBs or using a breadboard even, and particularly like if you're making a Frontsider ship, a surface vessel, this is what you'd pick. Altitude relative to target basically means the craft will try and match whatever the target altitude is, which is very handy if you're using fixed guns. And the combat distance is pretty self-explanatory. This is the distance that this craft is trying to maintain. So if we go here, you see the Marauder is roughly 1,000 meters away. Not exactly, because it's never quite exact. This is the AI that is like this. So, and it's never spot on. You don't really need it spot on. It's like always a little bit funky. Also, it needs to move back and forth and accelerate and decelerate. So that's that, and combat altitude is 200 meters. You'll notice we're not quite doing that, and that's because over in the adjustments I have that set higher. So this is actually kind of fighting each other a little bit. So if I actually want to change that, we can do this. Now, hopefully that is... Oh, look at that. That is not a huge amount better, actually. In fact, that hasn't changed anything. AI is fiddly. This is the kind of thing you want to mess with every behavior for a decent amount of time until you get the results you kind of want. And sometimes it just doesn't work. Like, I'd like to say, like, you follow exactly the same steps every time, it'll work. I kind of got lucky with the point at routine here, because sometimes it just does not want to do what I tell it to do. But yeah, that's point at and maintain distance. There's a lot of particularly scary craft in the game which do that, and I believe one of them is this one. Where are you? Where are you? What? Where are you? Tell me they didn't get rid of that. That would make me so sad. I think they did get rid of it. Nope, there it is. Great. So over here... Yep, point at, maintain distance. There is our friend, the Kobold. Frontsiders, for those of you who don't know, are extraordinarily powerful. Simply because they concentrate all their firepower and defense on a very narrow point. Which is right at the front. So you see, the Kobold here is a classic example. It has stacked layers of heavy armor and metal on the front of it. And it has 4 very big scary guns that point straight forward, and you can see the absolute river of Daka that spurts out of it like this. So yeah, Frontsiders are very, very strong, and so this particular point at and maintain distance routine can be very, very effective. So, do recommend that. Let us spawn in our friend the Marauder again. So, Marauder, friend. There's our friend, the Marauder. I did say we weren't going to blow up the Marauder much this time, didn't I? I think I lied. Okay, so that's point at maintain distance. This one is, where is it? Hover over plane. There we go. So, this is one of those routines that, these behaviors that is a little bit interesting. So, the maneuver of this particular craft is that of a plane. So, maneuver, it functions like a plane, but behavior is... This is probably the simplest behavior there is. All this craft tries to do is hover on top of something, or under something. Like, if I do this... So, you'll see right... Oops. You'll see right here, it just wants to stay on top of the target. It always wants to be on top of the target. It might look superficially similar to the bombing routine that we discussed earlier, but it's not quite like that. This is wanting to hug that point, that specific point on top of the Marauder, and wants to stay there. It isn't really an attack run. So yeah, it's very straightforward really. In fact, if I go over here, and I change that completely, so I'll probably also have to change everything on it, but screw it. So if I go -200, and also change over here the adjustments, minute you is -200. I just told this thing to nosedive into the ocean. Of course, it can't do that because it cannot do that at all because it's got jets and that's what's controlling its propulsion. But fun trick to do. If I stuck ion jets on this instead, that would work quite nicely. Which means that this particular routine, hover above or below, it's useful both for aircraft and submarines. So, uh-oh, we are going to bump butts with the Marauder right now. Oh no! Donk. Aren't you so happy that God mode is a thing? So in any case, great for submarines, particularly if you have upwards-facing particle cannons or any kind of gun that is pointed straight up to shoot enemy craft from underneath. Very handy. Also, if you just want to activate God mode on 2 craft and watch them rub up on each other, you can totally do that, you perv. Okay, so that's hover over above, and now we're gonna talk about the AI routine that I use the most, and that is straight broadside. So, go here, broadside, ship tank. So we're here. And this is arguably the simplest AI routine to get the hang of. So, We're going to go over here. I'm going to look at the eye. So, broadside right. And you can rename everyone, and you can also change the icon of it. Just mostly for your, for your own convenience. Just so you, can tell them apart. And so, this is quite simple. The angle that this craft wants to maintain, thanks to this behavior, is 90 degrees. And this is sensitive to which side it presents. So, if 0 degrees is straightforward, 90 degrees is clockwise. It's going clockwise around the craft. 90 is there. So you can see it's presenting its right side at a steady 90 degrees to the target. If I change that to the other side, minus 90, it's going to want to present its left side. So, you see, it is pretty much the same thing except the other side. And if you change it to anything else, it's basically negative is the left, or port, I believe that's called, in shippy terms, and right is positive, which is starboard. Do that again, and you'll see, changes to starboard, very simple. And its minimum distance is it's the minimum distance it will always put a waypoint to the target. If you set this to be very high, your craft will want to stay away from the target. I recommend setting this low for the most part because I tend to find that craft which have a very long minimum distance, if the enemy craft is faster than you, what tends to happen is that you turn tail and run and make yourself an easier target, because it means you're traveling in a straight line straight away from the enemy, which means that if they have any form of a weapon that needs to lead the target, they can just shoot straight up your arsehole and kill you. So that is usually a bad thing, and so I tend to set this to 0, so they are always maintaining that broadside, and they're always moving in a gradual curve, which tends to throw off the aim of a lot of things. It means they tend to overshoot, and also it also means that if your weapons are set to be a broadside, they are always on target, no matter what. And this is also actually better for dodging craft which try to ram you, because since you're always doing that curve, they're more likely to miss. If you try and turn and run away, as with projectiles and shells and stuff, they go straight up your arsehole, and that's really painful. And the maximum distance is the opposite. This is, waypoints will always be closer to the target than this number. This is basically the distance they want to always be within. So this is 1,500. I usually set this to 2,000, which is the maximum. If I set this lower, so say I set this to 100, you'll see that the craft wants to turn and get a lot closer than that. So you can kind of make almost a fake bomber, let's call it, by essentially setting the minimum distance as low as possible to around 10 meters. So it'll endlessly circle above the target. So kind of a fake hover above setting as well. So we go here, we're above the target, we're within 10 meters, and now we're doing that. And now we're just going to essentially Tokyo drift right above the target, which is quite a handy feature. So, did I mention this is the AI behavior I'm most familiar with? I figured out more than one trick with it. So, that is bog standard broadside. Quite straightforward. And so now we're going to spawn in our friend the Marauder again, but this time we're not going to turn on God mode for a very specific reason. And that is to show you... Okay, I definitely lied. We're going to hurt the Marauder's feelings quite a bit. Ramming. So the ramming routine results in quite a different looking craft. So here we have the ramming ship tank, and I'm going to turn you off for a second so we can talk about you. So you see, I've stuck a whole bunch of hydrofoils underneath this thing, and a whole bunch of rams on the underside and on the front, and this needs to be God mode because this is a testing vehicle. It's not 100%. If I... Actually, let's turn God mode off just to show you what happens when your ramming craft is not optimized. So all this is that this is telling you to go straight for the target. That's it. It's like you charge at them. And disengage, possible below 25 meters. Basically, what that means is that when you get to the within that target, you can think, maybe we shouldn't ram them if we're not going to connect. Disengage when range increases by 5 meters. If we are close enough to consider disengaging, if our distance increases by this much, we will engage. So basically, if the thing manages... This is a measure to not waste your time if the thing is going to dodge you anyway. Engage above 200 meters. If our value, distance to the target exceeds this value, we will re-engage them. So if they get 200 meters away, you'll start a new ramming run. Disable adjuster below 0 meters. If the range of target is less than this, the adjuster will not be used to ensure you hit your target dead center. So this is the adjuster, and this is the setting which determines whether you even bother to adjust. So, God mode is off. We're going to do this. So, this little guy, whoop, we need to get on him, is going to charge straight for the Marauder. Let's turn this off. And is going to do its utmost. And the Marauder is not actually a great target to showcase a ramming craft because it has rams on the front as well, which are immune to collision damage. So if we charge head-on, we're probably going to lose, but it's worth seeing anyway. So we're going to charge straight forward at a reasonably heady speed of 40 meters per second, and we'll see who loses. We are probably going to lose because we are going to side scrape a little bit. Yep, so that didn't go very well for us. And so this is why you want to cover completely the front of your ramming craft with rams. However, sticking rams on the underside is also a good idea if you've made what is essentially a hydrofoil craft, which I've done here, because you tend to scrape over the top of it. Let's repair you so we can pretend that if I hadn't done such a poor job, how would you look? So ramming craft are incredibly effective against a lot of things. Against anything that's on the surface that a ramming craft can just freely engage. That is very, very potent. They do huge amounts of damage, and they can be very hard to deal with if you aren't ready for them. If you don't think about them like specifically when designing your craft, they come as a very, very nasty surprise. And the white flares are full of them. So here's the charger. You see the charger will also has that ramming ability. So charger, like that. And ram. Aha, you fool! I have enabled God mode. From behind! Alright, this is getting obscene. Let's delete that. So, that's the ramming, or charging behavior. Let's spawn in our friend the Marauder. How many times this video have I said our friend the Marauder? If anyone's keeping count, share your findings with the world in the comment section. Which I guess is just the comment section, not the world. And so, next is Naval. So, Naval Broadside. So, like the circle at a distance and just regular broadside, this is pretty much just... Hey, this is pretty much just orbiting a craft. The difference is how it orbits a craft. So, we go here, we'll see, enter broadside below that range. Again, like the regular broadside, that is the distance, minimum distance we will get to. And leave broadside above... above that range. So basically, unlike the regular broadside, there's kind of a buffer area, so enter broadside below this range, but leave broadside above a range. So this craft will always want to stay between 1200 and, like, well, it'll want to stay below 1200 meters away from the target, but if it gets more than that, it'll break broadside and pursue. Broadside minimum range, same thing as the regular broadside, is that it will try to stay further away than this distance from the target, and the normal broadside angle is a little bit different. So, this, if you do this, this is not side sensitive, so unlike the regular broadside in which the maximum angle is 180, so 0 is straight forward, 180 or minus 180 is straight backwards, this is not so sensitive, so it can be either side. So this thing can engage in a broadside with either the right or the left, which is kind of a good thing, but also kind of a bad thing, because if you have multiple craft using this routine, and they're all orbiting the same thing, if one of them decides to change direction for whatever reason and broadside with the other side, you can have craft collide with each other, particularly if they've got a very strict distance to stick to. So I generally don't use this because the regular broadside just does a better job. It's more foolproof. It's one less option. Like, this really doesn't change an awful lot. This kind of minimum broadside thing just means that, I don't know, like, I think it's purely a matter of preference. This is essentially like the old feature, the old naval broadside back before the AI update happened. And so this is kind of a legacy AI, and is a legacy behavior, rather. And I don't know, I prefer other ones. But this is still there, and you can still use it if you want your craft to not be fussy about which side faces to the enemy, whether it's the left or right, port or starboard. So, that is that. So, that is the naval routine. And go here, spawn in, yes, our friend the Marauder. You can tell the Marauder's definitely our friend because I need to keep saying the Marauder's our friend. Friends do that, right? I always announce my friends as friends. I feel the need to say that because I'm totally secure in my friendships. So, that's the naval one, and then... No, where did... Tank broadside, there we go. This is almost identical. In fact, it really is identical. Like, you'll see, we do the thing, aha, which side are we presenting? We are presenting our left! What a coincidence. That's actually quite handy, because I wasn't sure how I was going to get this damn thing to demonstrate that. So, you'll see it's exactly the same settings. Except it has two new options. So these are exactly the same as the naval broadside, but it has idle settings. And it has a behavior summary right here, which probably the other thing had, but I forgot to look. So idle approach distance, the distance from a friendly player we'll try to maintain when no enemies are present and we are in combat mode. Did it actually have that? I don't even remember. So this is to stop your tanks running into each other, needlessly. Why you would want your ships to run into each other, I'm not sure. Maybe you feel that they need emotional support and they need regular hugs. But the most important feature and the difference between a tank broadside and the regular naval broadside, or the regular broadside, I got it right this time, is there's a cease movement below this range. So the distance from the enemy below which all movement will cease. Not entirely sure why you would specifically want a tank to do that, as opposed to a ship or anything else. Because I tend to find with the few tanks I've built that they really need to keep moving, otherwise they die. Otherwise they get their wheels blown off. But, well, this is a function. So, how far away are we? We are 600 meters away, so we're entering broadside below that distance. Cease movement range. If I set this to 700, we've now ceased all movement. And by the way, if you're using just regular, like, AI-controlled propulsion, so these things are all AI-controlled. There's no PIDs or ACBs or even a breadboard on this craft. They count as movement, so if you use this function, be sure to have a PID system up in place. And I happen to have one prefabbed to show you what this is. Where is it? Always prefab your PIDs. It's a good idea. So go here. And let's match this. So now we've done that. Let's just adjust this quickly. 200. And say this is 202. And if we get rid of that below 100 range, get rid of that. You see, away we go. And if we set that again, say cease movement below 1,000 meters. This is basically... It's interesting, like, you could potentially have some pretty interesting tactics with this. You could have something that just... It flies within a certain range or something, or drives, or swims, or whatever, warps, to within range, and then it just sits there. And, generally speaking, it's a good idea to keep your craft moving because that's pretty much the only way to dodge things, but if you have some other measure to make them, say, bob up and down, like a ACBs or PID, This can be a way just to get them to within a certain distance and then stop, which I guess is the main advantage of the tank broadside. But yep, this is boring to look at now because we're not moving, and I brought a PID into this video when I didn't mean to. Ugh, and that gave me gas, apparently. And there's, we've got the second to last AI behavior to talk about, so I hope you're still with us. I hope you're still having a good time and learning things. And that is aerial bombing. So I mentioned earlier that the definitions in the AI behavior menu seem to be backwards between the bombing behavior and the aerial bombing behavior. There's not a huge amount of difference between it, except, as I pointed out before, the bombing behavior has it fly towards the target, stop short, and then retreat, and then come around again. So it's basically, rather than flying over the target, it's flying in an ellipse in front of it, if that makes sense. So, we go here, aerial bombing airplane, we can observe this guy's behavior. Very similar to the bomber, except this guy does not stop short. This one flies over the target in a kind of figure 8. So let's go here, get Rambot to sit on the wobbly thing. So they're going to fly over the target. You can see the path right there, heading straight forward, and does not turn around, keeps flying over the top. If this thing had bombs, it would probably drop them now, and keeps flying, keeps flying, keeps flying over, and at some point it is going to turn around and come around for another attack run, right there. See? And the way it does that is with the routine it's got. And while I'm saying obvious things, I have 10 fingers. That's a lie, I have 8 fingers and 2 thumbs. Shocking, shocking. So, this, you'll notice, is a little bit different from the bombing function, because it doesn't control pitch. It's arguably a lot simpler. And, in fact, this is also a legacy AI behavior back before the big update. Cruising altitude is just, when it's flying, that's what it does. It's mostly taken over by the Adjustments tab, determining the minimum and maximum altitude. And flyover height is 0 meters, the altitude above or below the target we will use on approach. So you can still kind of control the dive bombing aspect of this behavior, but not so much as the regular bombing routine. And begin attack run when beyond 250 meters, so if we get beyond that, that is when the attack run will begin. Abort attack run when below 50 meters, so that's basically when you stop, basically trying to execute the attack run, and you just keep flying straight, and then wait 15 seconds before starting a new attack run, which kind of works along with the minimum attack run distance, and in order to get the thing to turn around and come around for another go. So this is arguably a little bit simpler than the regular, like just the bombing routine. The main difference is that this flies over the target, whereas the regular bombing run flies at the target. There's slight difference. So just to contrast that, you'll notice how this guy's flying. Figure 8 over the target is going like that, so to speak. And getting our friend the Duster in to attack us. Why did I do that? So the Duster is flying away for some reason. I'm not sure why it's doing that. You'll see the Duster will not try and fly under us. How did you get damaged? So, not trying to fly under us, stopping just short, and just flying away. And apparently now we're trying to engage it, which is hilarious. Well, I guess it did just fire at us, so going to fly away, fly away. It's faster than us, and it's going to come around, and fly away again. So, yeah, think of the regular bombing behavior as hit and run, and the aerial bombing as actual bombing run, like what you'd expect a real-life bomber to do. So yeah, that's aerial bombing, and last but not least, we actually don't need the Marauder for this one. Shocking, I know. Got so used to our friend the Marauder. there's a behavior which is resource gathering. So, I'm going to spawn in my large resource gatherer, and you see it's moving. Resource gathering is very simple. It's just, when it is activated, the craft will move towards the nearest resource zone, which is what this is, and it will start gathering resources. And that's it. So, let's go check out the AI over here. So, looking at this, it's like there's actually no options here at all, because there's no need to change this at all. It's just, it goes to the resource zone, and sits in it, and harvests. And that's it. That's really it. I found out the hard way that this is best done on a fortress with the fortress maneuver, because it seems to behave in a kind of weird way if you try to stick it on a vehicle. I guess, like, there's ways you could tweak it so the vehicle could be rock steady and just stops inside the zone. Maybe if you do that with a ship, with reverse enabled, importantly. But mostly this is something you'd stick on a fortress. And this fortress is not friggin' getting to the right altitude. Can you please? So, get out of the water, you dingbat. There we go. Actually, I might have set this so... Please tell me you're not descending. You're not? Great. So, that is basically all the AI behaviors. Like, and hopefully a helpful overview of, like, why you would use each one, what situation you'd use each one in. And, like, hopefully those of you who are still new at this game have an idea now of what... oh my god, I did mess with it. I messed with this earlier. It's no good. It's no good, mate. It's no good. I've turned Australian, mate. Alright. Get the heck out of the water, you piece of garbage. Come on, get out of there. Get out of there. Good boy. I'm gonna save that vehicle. There, I saved it. I'm officially rambling now. The vehicle must be over. So, that is AI behavior. Next will be AI adjustments, which hopefully will be a lot shorter video. I'm just looking at my timer and thinking, oh, doggone it, I've done it again. But hopefully you've all stuck around to see this wonderful spinny satellite dish. It's almost hypnotizing. You are getting sleepy. You will subscribe to BorderWise. Huh? What? Oh, fell asleep for a second. Thank you all so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Support me on Patreon if you like. It really helps. Thank you to all my current Patreon supporters, and I will see you next time in From the Depths. Farewell.